Battle for Dream Island has been around since 2010, over 15 years now. The series has gone through many major events and changes throughout the years, and these events have shaped how BFDI is to the current day. One thing that always stuck out to me is, how did BFDI get to this point? What happened during the timeline that brings it to the present day? To try and figure it out, I want to go over the entire BFDI timeline, from the start all the way to the present day, and go over the major changes that have occurred in the almost past 2 decades. However, we need to start off further than 2010. We need to go back to 2008. Before getting into the actual media of BFDI, have you ever wondered how Fiery, Leafy, Bubble, or even Rocky came to existence? Or when they first showed up? A lot of people believe that the main 20 characters of BFDI came from, well, BFDI, the first season. That, however, isn't true. While Carrie was hosting his own object camp known as Baguette, the challenge there involved figuring out which characters were created first. After the challenge, Carrie would reveal the character generation chart, with there being 5 total generations. Character generation 1 shows Fiery, Woody, Teardrop, Spongy, and Match. This shows that Fiery was the very first character to be made, and the rest were shown in a comic called Fiery to Keep Our Customers Happy on May 2nd, 2008. Character generation 2 involves Pencil, Eraser, and Bubble, being first shown in a series of comics known as Fiery Expansion, being made sometime around the summer of 2008. Character generation 3 shows Coiny, Tennis Ball, Flower, and Ice Cube, first appearing in Fiery Comics number 2 around late summer 2008. Character generation 4 has Blocky, Snowball, Rocky, and Golf Ball, coming to life on September 10th, 2008. This date also has something important. Total Fiery Island is a series of books made by Carrie Huang and predates Battle for Dream Island. It has a cast of 16 characters, mainly the 4 character generations that I've shown, along with a host, the announcer. TFI spans about 18 books, being released from September 10th, 2008 to around October of the same year. The book series holds a number of contests such as balance beams, rolling dice, dodgeball, a spelling bee, and so on. In terms of an elimination style, it is a contestant vote, meaning contestants in the game vote for who they want out. They also have teams, that being the Murder Trout and Yelling Beavers. Despite the book being named after Fiery, he doesn't actually... Despite the book being named after income tax return document, he only places 9th in the series, with Pencil being the winner of the season. Total income tax, Total Fiery Island is basically the starting point for Battle for Dream Island, despite it coming out in 2008. While it isn't exactly known if TFI is considered canon to the timeline, other than an episode that we will talk about much later, it can't be argued that this is technically where BFDI began, even if it isn't called that. Before getting to Battle for Dream Island itself, there is one more character generation I need to mention first. This is character generation 5, which includes Needle, Pen, Leafy, and Pin, as they weren't in Total Fiery Island. These 4 technically appeared in a sequel series called Total Fiery Points, although that was never finished and isn't indeed canon to the timeline, so we'll just skip that and say they first appeared in Battle for Dream Island. Speaking of... Hey, just wanted to say that 90% of you who watch my videos aren't subscribed. I know people say this often, but these videos do take a while to research and edit, so it would really help me and the channel out if you hit that subscribe button. Hope you're enjoying the video so far. Let's get back into it. Battle for Dream Island, the first season, began on January 1st, 2010, this time with a cast of 20 characters, including those from character generation 5. Aside from him, we'll get to him later. The series begins with BFDI 1A, where the challenge is the balance beam, which is similar to TFI Book 2. This episode also shows Coiny and Fiery's rivalry, which is also carried over from TFI. After the balance beam challenge, of which Leafy and Pin won, they begin to form teams, the Squishy Cherries and the Squashy Grapes. BFDI 2 is where we get our first ever elimination in the series. However, Instead of it being a contestant vote like the TFI, the voting system this time is vote to eliminate, where you say a contestant's name in the comments to vote them out. Flower is the very first person to be eliminated, with the now famous comment by Jay Sillyboy, now known as Blue Jay, popping up, being Flower goes away. There is a elimination area for this season, being called the TLC. The season would go on as normal, with different challenges and contestants being eliminated per episode. Although, in BFDI 5, announcer ends up getting stabbed by some scissors object, and some pillow ends up pushing all the contestants down the cliff since the bridge is broken, and they end up staying there for a long... What was I talking about? Oh right, the season goes on as normal, until BFDI 9, where the very first rejoin happens. In BFDI 8, the viewers were allowed to vote on one contestant who was eliminated to compete again, of which Blocky got the most votes, being the first contestant to win a rejoin. This is also where Bomby first appears, but not as a contestant, but as a recommended character. Recommended characters are sub-characters that appear randomly, but they're mainly there just to watch. BFDI 9 is also where a third team is formed, being Another Name. BFDI 12 is where the first team merge happens. A team merge is where teams are broken up and contestants now compete for individual immunity, rather than team immunity. Win tokens that were gained as well are removed, and replaced with 15 bonus points per win token, with the Racer, Fiery, Pen, and Blocky getting the points. There have been times where win tokens were used, such as Pin, Needle, and Golf Ball, but it didn't even help them. The remaining 12 contestants also got a prize, that being the BFDI DDS. BFDI 14 is where the second rejoin happens, and instead of it being a vote, eliminated contestants have to win a challenge to rejoin, that being bringing loaves of bread to a basket. Spongy wins the second rejoin. BFDI 15 is interesting, as again, a random object that looks like a leak appears and starts to mess with the contest, along with Snowball. How did he get out of the TLC? Moving on, in BFDI 17, this episode holds an important event in BFDI's history, the very first debut. Just like with how the first rejoin happened, viewers were allowed to vote on 30 different characters to decide on who gets to join Battle for Dream Island. This is also where Pencil receives her very first vote. In BFDI 18, the winner is David, and he is the very first character to win a debut, and is also added onto the Character Generations 5 chart. Since the TLC didn't have any room for the failed debuters of BFDI, the announcer changes the elimination era from the TLC to a larger box, called the LOL. BFDI 21 has the third rejoin, in which Flower gets the most amount of votes from viewers to rejoin. Throughout most of BFDI, our host has mainly been the announcer, until BFDI 22 where he was crushed and now they needed a new host. Fiery and Flower both bring out their own personally made announcer boxes to host the show instead. As well for making it this far into the season, the special prize is a full-on house. Fiery and Flower's speaker box being hosts didn't last very long as announcer came back right in the next episode in BFDI 23. BFDI 25 is the final episode of the season where out of our final 3, Bubble, Fiery, or Leafy will win Dream Island. In the end, Income Tax Fiery wins Dream Island. All of the eliminated contestants are let out of the TLC, and as a nice gesture, Fiery decides to let everyone enter Dream Island, even Coiny. However, he doesn't let one person in, Leafy. Fiery doesn't let Leafy in Dream Island due to her comment about Fiery's Ferris wheel. After some random fight scene occurs between Pencil and a failed Pillow debuter, Fiery overhears a commotion and ends up letting Leafy in Dream Island, and thus brings us to the end of Battle for Dream Island. Infuriated, Leafy calls announcer and buys Dream Island away from Fiery, leading to the entire island disappearing, and the contestants connecting the pieces together on Leafy for doing something. They capture Leafy and decide that they want to kill her. However, before the Crusher reaches Leafy, Fiery comes in on a hang glider and saves her, which at this point is the end of Battle for Dream Island. Or is it? After the events of BFDI 25, Fiery and Leafy are seen still on the hang glider, but Fiery loses control, leading them to crash on an open field. The other contestants from Season 1 spot Leafy, and they decide to chase her, besides Fiery, deciding to just leave. After Leafy is being chased, an object that looks like a clapboard bumps into Leafy, but lets her go free. Since the other contestants saw this, they decide to take the clapboard object instead to kill. This time, a different group of people consisting of Tennis Ball, Pen, Bottle, and some light switch. They eventually get Leafy and bring her back to the Crusher and taking a clapboard instead. They begin chasing Leafy for a good while, all the way into the forest. Leafy ends up getting away using her map trick, and she isn't seen again, and they all walk back to the main area where the first season was held. Before this, viewers were allowed to vote multiple times on different characters they wanted to compete in a second season. This included all the season 1 characters and failed debuters. Around 22 contestants would compete this time in a season that is now called Battle for Dream Island again. Before the contestants were finalized, a few rules were set for the season. Rule 1. Contestants not present may not compete, which eliminates those such as Flower, Leafy, and Bubble. Rule 2. Eliminated contestants must be treated with TLC, meaning those who didn't make it will be put in the TLC. Rule 3. Spin the wheel to choose the next contest. And Rule 4. Before a contest, players may switch teams if they want, which is a huge deal. After the final 22 were made, the season finally begins on June 29th, 2012. This season still follows the vote to eliminate format from season 1. However, instead of viewers commenting on who they want out, they instead dislike a specific character's video as a way to vote them out. You can also like a character's video to get them a prize. Teams are not named yet, as contestants can change whenever they want, until BFDI 2, where the team of Coiny, Donut, and Pin becomes Wobunch, and the other team is called Team No Name. Although ineligible to compete as he didn't have enough votes, TV becomes a host for BFDIA 1 and 2. As announcer had previously left in BFDI 25, Leafy is spotted to be in some unknown area with purple grass and berries, listening to some kind of radio. But she's all alone. In BFDIA 3, Puffball brings out a Puffball speaker box and lets her host instead, with TV becoming a co-host. In BFDIA 4, the contestants realize that there isn't even a prize to fight for, so they make the challenge to create a prize. Team No Name creates a second Dream Island since the first one is gone, but ends up being blown up by Bommy. Instead, the prize is now what Wobunch has created. Whatever that is. BFDIA 5A is where Free Smart forms, with Pencil, Bubble, Match, and Ruby, with Book and Ice Cube acting as alternates. Puffball Speaker Box is also no longer the host due to being stabbed with a knife by Pin, of which the Fiery Speaker Box comes back to host. This is also the episode where Pin sadly loses her limbs. BFDIA 5B is treated as a game, where Free Smart must escape Evil Leafy after they were eaten in the previous episode. They do manage to get out in BFDIA 5C. BFDIA 5E is where we first see Yoyle City, as Free Smart enters it for the first time. Since the contestants have moved to Goiki to the now known Yoyle land, the challenges are mostly taking place there instead. The elimination area is also changed, as the LOL is too far away now, and it's changed to a wooden structure called the WTF. Puffball Speaker Box returns as a host for BFDIA 8 due to Fiery Speaker Box being too sad that Fiery is now eliminated. BFDIA 9 is where the Wind Token makes a reappearance by Yellowface, as he is seen printing multiple copies of them. However, like with Pin, Needle, and Golf Ball in BFDI, they didn't help him at all. There is also some weird hell-like area that shows up. No idea what that's doing there. Puffball Speaker Box is no longer the host once BFDIA 10 comes, due to her being crushed by Spongy. The episode also shows two new teams being formed, the Beautiful Face Devotion Institute and Fries, because he's by himself. There are smaller events that occur throughout BFDIA, such as in BFDIA 10, when Pencil and the others are trying to figure out a way to get the RCs to eat their ice cream to win the challenge, a sort of shopping cart appears, crashing down and sending the RCs into a frenzy. A different group of people, being Ice Cube, Snowball, Book, a price tag, and Grassy, are shown to get the shopping cart and bring everyone back to normal. What's going on? Anyway, Pin loses her face in BFDIA 11, with Flower returning randomly as well to host in the episode. Pin becomes smaller in BFDIA 12, with the Bugs now hosting. BFDIA 13 has an interesting number of events. To start, there is a nod to a future season, said by Fiery. Coiny also finds Pin in the Hell area, as Pin has been communicating with Coiny in some way, although we don't exactly know how. As well as Rocky shown to get his barf back, since he lost it all the way in the middle of BFDI. The LOLers also had their assets changed to a more modern look, besides Grassy for some reason. This is also where Fiery is shown to recover Leafy, despite Fiery not being on good terms with her, and leaves her alone to wander around. Again. BFDI 14 is where Pin finally comes back to normal. Sort of. She has her face back, but she has mech wheels to move around. The LOLers are also now hosting, as the bugs were crushed by Spongy. Balloony is then shown hosting in BFDI 16, as he complained that the characters in the LOL were too rowdy to host. This episode also has Nickel as his own team. Balloony didn't host for that long though, as the contestants wanted them gone due to them being annoying and tried to crush them with Spongy, but failed. Balloony then calls a recent contact to host, which has happened numerous times, and the LOLers leave. The recent contact was Fiery, in which he, along with the other WTFers, host in BFDI 17 and onwards. Yeah, there's a lot of different hosts in BFDIA, isn't there? Roughly 8 in total if you don't want to count everyone in the LOL and a WTF. One interesting event that occurs is with Tennis Ball and Nickel, where they have appeared to have traveled in time. To where? I guess we'll find out soon. Leafy also appears in front of Ice Cube, but we don't know for what exactly. Fry Smart also forms in this episode. BFDI 18 is where the merge finally happens, as Tennis Ball uses his disbandment token he got from getting the most likes to separate Coiny and Pin, as they were the last remaining team and now everyone is fighting for themselves. Pin is then shown betraying Coiny, showing a start to Pin's more competitive but rather dark side to herself. As of now, this is how far the timeline goes in BFDIA, due to BFDIA 18 being the most recent episode. This will change later on, but for now, this is where it ends for BFDIA. We aren't done, however. On July 23rd, 2016, a short would be uploaded titled BFDI is Back, in which Coiny, Fiery, and Needle discuss the return of BFDI after the events of BFDIA. This is one of 3 shorts that are canon to the timeline, and it even has a Flower and Ice Cube cameo. There isn't much from the video to go off from, other than a specific date being shown, September 1st, 2016, which brings us to the day arrives, September 1st, 2016. We first see Freesmart on the top floor of the Yoyle Needy, after Pencil finds out that the events of BFDIA were not recorded due to Ruby forgetting to take the lens cap off the camera, which was foreshadowed back in BFDIA 6, a whole 3 years ago. We also see that at this point, the remaining contestants that were in the WTF are now shown to be staying in Yoyle City. This will then be dubbed the 3rd season of BFDI, called IDFB. The next important event is with Golf Ball, as when she enters the abandoned museum with Tennis Ball, she gets a flashback when looking at a broken vase, showing her without her dimples. Although we aren't sure if this is exactly Golf Ball herself, it is still important to bring up. In this museum as well, Tennis Ball takes a device that can let out contestants from the LOL, as they have been stuck in there for well over 3 years. Afterwards, we see Fiery just up in the air, trapped in a cage hanging from the top of the Yoyle Needy, of which it is said that he's up there as punishment. We don't know for what exact reason he's up there, but it's believed it has to do with Leafy of some kind, since he was the one who recovered her back in BFDI 13. Due to how thick the walls are, the device can only let out 1 person every 1 month, as it is needed to recharge before doing so again. This also brings up how this isn't a competitive season, and instead of each contestant being eliminated, it is instead voting to bring a contestant out of the LOL. Before the end of IDFE 1, there is a final scene which shows that Leafy herself is in Yoyle City, hiding from everyone else. Let's just not speak about what Coiny was doing with that hot oil, let's just pretend that didn't happen. This is where the timeline ends regarding IDFB, as there's only 1 episode as of now. Maybe we can figure out more later, but only time will tell whenever that gets revealed. Let's move on to another short that's canon to the timeline. On October 2nd, 2016, a canon short by the name of Paper Towels would be released, mainly featuring Blocky and Eraser. Other than Blocky really wanting paper towels that Eraser has, not much is of importance in this short, besides the background, which will be important in a short bit. We are still nowhere near done with the timeline. November 3rd, 2017, roughly 1 year after the events of IDFB 1, we see that all of the contestants are now at a different part of Goiki, mainly the area that was shown on paper towels. We can see that all of the contestants from previous seasons and the failed debuters are all out of the LOL, mainly due to Tennis Ball's device being able to let them all out. Leafy is shown to be accepted back into society, as no one seems to have that much of an issue with her anymore, as well as a completely new character, Loser, showing up. Shown to be a celebrity of sorts, as everyone knows who they are. Nico and Tennis Ball from BFDI 17 appear, with Nico missing his chunk that is on top of a pile of forks. Donut and Bottle spot the both of them, wondering if they were there the entire time, to which Tennis Ball says that they have been there the entire time, and calls Donut silly. Donut and Bottle don't really seem to care that much and look away briefly, as Nico and Tennis Ball disappear, which leads to Donut calling the situation weird, with Bottle agreeing. Not much happens for a bit, until Flower asks Black Hole to open a jar for her, to which the end of the world nearly occurs. That's until he appears. Called the Algebraians, 4 and X appear in front of everyone, with 4 reducing Black Hole to a smaller size so that he doesn't destroy the world. 4 asks if anyone wants to compete for a prize, that being a BFDI. Everyone is extremely ecstatic about the prize and decides to compete in a new season. This is now the 4th season, called the Battle for BFDI, with a cast of 64 contestants, the most so far out of any season. This season goes back to the elimination format that was in the first season, a vote to eliminate style where the viewers vote in the comments via typing the bracket of the associated contestant. The teams formed for this season would be, another name than that, Beep, Bleh, Death Pact, Free Food, Ions, Team Ice Cube, and the Losers. The season goes on as it normally would, of course with a few smaller events happening. In BFB 3, Balloony brings up a place called the Exit, after 4 mentioning that the person eliminated will go to sleep. 4 tells Balloony that he isn't supposed to know that, to which Balloony says he was just guessing. In BFB 5, as we see everyone on board their paper airplanes, a kitchen sink appears, joining in late on the party with Free Food. Other than the kitchen sink being cracked by Lie, there's not much of importance here. Although, that 3 character looks interesting. BFB 6 through 8 has Donut hosting the season, as the consensus started to not like how 4 was treating everybody, and decided to try and get rid of him by multiplying it with 0, the 0 being fitting for Donut. Donut's diary appears for the first time in BFB 7, and becomes important later on. We see the fiery speaker box appear one final time in BFB 8, as it was destroyed for a prize. BFB 9 is where X hosts instead, since 4 is still gone. 4 returns in BFB 10, and the place that Balloony brings up back in BFB 3 is shown here, being the elimination area called the Exit. Those who are eliminated are now referred to as the Exiters. This is also the episode where a rejoin happens, something that hasn't occurred since BFDI 21. In BFB 11, Leafy wins the rejoin, after being eliminated in BFB 3. Not much happens until BFB 15, in which this is the first time in a while where Fiery finally talks to Leafy, but it wasn't a good conversation. Fiery admits that he has to pretend that he still hates Leafy because the original contestants are really the only ones that still don't like her, and he does it so that they don't go after him. BFB 16 is where a huge event in the timeline happens. Another Algebraian shows up, being 2. They appear to have missed Earth where the contestants are, due to an anchor pushing the planet further down. Instead, a different Algebraian, being 9, decides to host a new season of BFDI, being called The Power of 2. 2 reveals that their prize is their powers, to which they unearth an entire hotel from the ground to demonstrate their power. 4 tries to convince the remaining contestants to stay with them by changing the prize, however this instead angers some of them, especially Fanny, to which now they are competing for a completely different prize, and some decide to go with 2 instead. 2 then removes the last 14 contestants that decide to stay with 4 and sends them to the Pillory Ruins, while the remaining 40 are now competing in a brand new 5th season. Before being sent off, Loser, who's the only one who escaped the Exit, takes Donut's second diary, as the first one he's done reading. There is also a debut, where you can vote on 25 different recommended characters in which they have a chance to compete in Teapot. However, that doesn't mean that BFB is over. While Battle for BFDI has ended on March 24th, 2020. Instead, a Season B would be made, that being Battle for BFB will be considered Season 4B and began on April 17th, 2020. For this season, Loser and Spongy would rejoin to compete, despite the both of them being out previously in the now called Season 4A. This is also where the elimination format changes. Instead of vote to eliminate, where the person with the most votes is out, it is changed to VTS, or Vote to Save, in which the person with the least amount of votes will now be out. The contestants are split again into two teams, the Have-Cots and the Have-Nots. A bit before BFB 18, the Exiters make one final attempt to escape by opening the back door before being chased by 4. This leads them into the forest, where they decide to split up into teams to search for a way out. This causes Pencil, David, and Bracelet to enter a classroom in order to escape from 4, and a time to figure out on what to do. The 3 of them look through different classrooms. Match, Stapy, and Lai figure out how to get up the waterfall, and 8-Ball, Fiery Jr., and Dora are just trying to find a way out, but keep going in circles. After the first 4B elimination, 4 states that there isn't enough room in the exit anymore, and sends Balloony, who is eliminated, to a different place that we brought up later. BFB 22 is where we get to see the elimination area, that being the BRB, or Big Rotating Building, as a celebration for Flower and Taco's votes having a difference of 1. Before the challenge even begins, Disky, as we now know is a recommended character for Teapot, appears to have taken Donut's diary, which appears to be related to the challenge. However, a different team, consisting of Yellowface, Pillow, Golf Ball, Pencil, somehow, and something that looks like a blue cloud, but guessing that its winner from the recommended character vote appears, and try to get Disky back. The Free Smart Super Van also makes a reappearance as well, and they begin fighting the remaining contestants that are still in BFB. In the end, they get Disky back, as well as putting the diary back in its place. The challenge is to figure out who stole Donut's diary, and it was revealed to have been Fiery, as he was still upset at Leafy for streaming Dream Island back in BFDI 25. This is also where a new alliance is formed, that being the Newbie Alliance, mainly started off with Lollipop and Gelatin, as they are the only non-Season 1 contestants left. This is where Fiery and Leafy have yet another conversation, but this time being a good one as they eventually made up. BFB 23 is where Purpleface appears, but this isn't the first time he's shown up. He has appeared briefly in BFDI along with Yellowface in different ads. However, Yellowface locked up Purpleface and has been in there since BFDI 9. He now acts as a co-host. BFB 24 is when the merge happens and teams are disbanded. Teardrop is added to the Newbie Alliance in BFDI 25. BFB 26 is where Profiley appears, however they claim that they have been there since the first season, but no one seems to know who they are. After Lollipop is eliminated in BFB 27, Teardrop decides to add Leafy to the Alliance, to which she adds Flower. Now this is where the timeline gets a little tricky, because our next event is actually in Teapot. The start of Season 5, The Power of 2, began on January 10th, 2021. 2 is the host of the season, and it is shown that Winner and Price Tag both won a debut, bringing the cast up to 42. As they are picking teams, Clock reveals that Winner was in a duel with Loser, however due to a falling out, Loser hit the mainstream and Winner faded into obscurity. The reasons at this point are not yet known. The teams for this season are The Strongest Team on Earth, Death Pact Again, Are You Okay, Teammates, The S, and Just Not. Nickel and Tennis Ball from BFDIA 17 appear again, this time while the Teapot 1 challenge is ongoing, as Nickel's chunk is stabbed out again by Needle since they are trying to reach the top of the hotel. Up on the next floor, they encounter Rubber Spatula, a now failed debuter talking to Teapot Nickel. However, BFDIA Nickel says they have no idea who they are, with Tennis Ball running by saying that they are just passing by. Nickel gets his chunk back and they both disappear again. The Exiters are still trying to find a way out. Again, according to the timeline, we now have to go back to BFB. We return to BFB at BFB 28, to where everyone that was in the BRB is now let out by X. We also see that the announcer came back, in which we haven't seen him since he left back in BFDI 25, leading to 4 feeling rather jealous and decides to disappear into the ground below. The Newbie Alliance is now turned into an official team, but is disbanded in the same episode. BFB 29 has an interesting number of events. Announcer reveals that he was behind BFDIA, at least up until 5E, where he left as the show lost budget and he believed it to be cancelled. He was the one who wrote the rules, left the HPRC, and was even watching the contestants. He also built the Puffball speaker box. BFB 30 is the final episode, coming out on April 9th, 2021. Before the winner is announced, we see 4 in a sort of dream world, hosting the 43rd season of BFDI. He soon finds out though that it isn't real. Announcer then reveals the winner, in which Taco, Flower, is the winner. Flower went from being the first ever eliminated contestant to a season winner. Flower earns the prizes, but gives a BFB to Gelatin and a grand cake to the other contestants. After the winner is announced, 4 returns but in a very agitated state and begins to run away, where some of the contestants chase after him. Along the way, Lollipop and Gelatin ask X if 4 was a fan of the show, to which X says that he was the biggest fan, sitting in front of the TV watching the episodes, memorizing everything, and even explaining how 4 compressed all the episodes into one block, that being the BFDI. Once they catch up to the BRB, 4 takes control of it and they launch to the sun. Down on Goiki, Clock notices that 4 is the sun and asks 2 if they can deal with it, thinking they are stronger than 4. 2 says that they have no idea where they got that from and would rather not deal with it, which shows that 4 is more powerful than 2. After these events, as everything settles, Fiery and Leafy leave and set off to find a new dream island, and this is where BFB ends. We still aren't done though, we have the rest of Teapot to get through. Before the event to Teapot 2, yeah, the Exiters are still trying. Although, Match, Stapy, and Lai finally make it up the waterfall. Until they fall. Teapot 2 is where we see Teardrop again, despite BFB just recently finishing months prior. Ruby did stay in BFB 30 where she was wondering where Teardrop went, and it looks like she somehow made her way back to Goiki. Profiley also appears, saying that Teardrop wants to join, to which 2 lets her. However, due to Fanny and Golfball not liking the idea of having a third person join, 2 decides to just have Teardrop compete on her own team, by herself, forming the team Teardrop. At the end of the episode, 2 gives a token to teammates, which Pin gets. What the token does, however, is unknown. In Teapot 3, there have been complaints about 2 disappearing for months, which Nita was the one to vocally bring up, seeing as the last 2 episodes took several months to a year to come out. Clock also brings up how having over 40 contestants would drag on this season, so 2 decides to change the elimination format to where 2 teams can now be up for elimination, meaning 2 people will be out each episode to speed up the competition. Teapot 4 is where the very first double elimination happens, this being on Saw and Cloudy. In the following episode, we see the dead bodies of Freesmart that have appeared way back in BFDIA still at the bottom of the Goiki Canal. Teapot 6 is when 4 and X return, showing that they are the chefs of the hotel. Teapot 7 holds a number of events. To start off, there is a major shift with Death Pact again, after Lightning complains that each time they prevent death, the team is up for elimination, to which Fanny decides to challenge the pact. Despite Clock being eliminated, 2 decides to keep him around in the hotel, seeing as they see him and Winner having unresolved conflict. Clock as well begins to work in the kitchen with 4 and X. The gates from Dream Island also appear, but are destroyed as it is used for a trade. Due to Teardrop reigning on Robot Flower, her personality changes to BFDI Flower, a more rude and aggressive side compared to BFB Flower. Earlier in the episode, we see that Ice Cube lost their legs, and we see that later on that Yellowface has them. More weird events occur in Teapot 8, such as the balancing challenge in BFDI 1A coming back, Fanny losing her mouth, Fiery and Leafy appear again on a brand new island, and Donut loses his arms, with Yellowface now having a full set of limbs. Tree is shown growing in the canal as a full-fledged tree, but he isn't able to move. Match, Lai, and Stapy make it up the waterfall again, and climb the ceiling to reach the castle on the other side. Not until Stapy accidentally knocks Match off the cliff and now they have to do it again. Before getting into Teapot 9, we need to talk about our third canon short. Planned Dissolve Adhesive takes place at the same time as Teapot 8 on October 25th, 2023, this time being on the failed debuters at the hotel, with the prime focus being on PDA. What really occurs in the episode isn't exactly important to the timeline, other than the ending where we see all of them glued at the top of the hotel. Let's finish up Teapot now, shall we? At the start of Teapot 9, we see the continuation of the failed debuters still glued to the top of the hotel from the PDA short. This episode also has a sort of zombie infestation occurring, mainly being caused by putting lava-infused puke into barf bag. The only way to stop this is with pure water, of which Teardrop is. As an act of sacrifice, Teardrop eliminates herself to save everyone else, and is now no longer competing. Towards the end, we see someone appear out of the moon that was broken back in Teapot 7, this being a new Algebraian, 1. From this point on, 1 would make random appearances in the background, mainly in places you wouldn't expect her to be at. Teapot 10 shows us specific characters' nightmares, and we will mainly focus on Winner and Black Hole. Black Hole and Fanny talk about the issues with the pact, to which Fanny and Black Hole settle on a compromise. Winner mentions how they didn't like how Loser turned out, with the fame getting to his head, and that they didn't enjoy being around him anymore and felt forgotten, hence why they don't want to be seen as famous anymore. Clock sees how he was in the wrong for doing this to Winner and apologizes for it. Clock then asks 2 to send him to the elimination area, as the conflict at this point has now been resolved. Teapot 11 shows us the Exiters once again. It shows all of them gathering supplies to escape, but the group of Match, Stapy, and Lie encounter something rather interesting, a jail cell, but they just chalk it up to being empty. While Pencil, Bracelety, and David are opening doors in the hallway, one of them opens to a number, that being 6. Nothing else happens other than 6 noticing it. In the end, they gather enough supplies to escape, mainly with Robati stopping 4 from interfering, and they escape after being in there for roughly 5 to 7 years. Once 4 spots them being out and is about to put them back in the exit, 2 notices the commotion, with the Exiters begging them to not have to be put back in there. At the end of the episode, Purpleface shows up, thinking that the Exiters are still trapped and goes in to save them. After wandering around, he passes by the jail cell, and we see that the cell isn't empty, and a red arm is seen closing the jail cell. Could this be another Algebraian? Teapot 12 is where the first team swap occurs, where new teams are formed. However, one messes with the team formats. The new teams are now Death Pact yet again, Team 2, Bagged, and Cloudier. Robot Flower, though, isn't on a team, and the prize is for her to join a team that finishes the challenge first. From this point, 1 begins to take eliminated contestants before 2 has a chance to bring them to the elimination area. 1 takes Bommy and Belle as they were eliminated, however Basketball spots her. 1 also takes competing contestants to secure a deal with them, such as Fanny to get her mouth back and Ice Cube to get her legs back, with 1 explaining how she is a friend of 2 and wants to do this to help their friends. Death Pact yet again are the first to finish the challenge, and Robot Flower joins them. 2 decides to then hold a debut, which hasn't happened since Teapot 1. Basketball is seen following 1, however 1 notices her and takes her as well. Teapot 13 does not let up with the timeline events. A major storm strikes Goiki, hitting Fiery and Leafy first on their now named Dreamier Island. As the storm passes, Leafy is gone, with Fiery wondering where she is, and 1 is spotted looking from a distance. 1 then attempts to strike a deal with Basketball to have Robot Flower return to how she was before. This is also where we see that 1 is behind the storm and it begins to strike the hotel, where the debut is taking place. Those who didn't make it are blown away by the strong winds, and the rest are brought into the hotel. Originally, 1 contestant was going to join, but 1 decides to mess with it and have 2 people join instead. Due to this, Lie and Pencil rejoin, with Lie going on Bagged and Pencil going to Cloudier. Robati is the first failed debuter we see appear, as he is sent back to the hotel. Needle and Barfbag are taken by 1, as they were eliminated in the episode. Tennis Ball and Nickel from BFDI 17 appear once again in the middle of the storm, seemingly after the Robot Flower fight. As Tennis Ball and Nickel try to get the Yoyle light back, Nickel calls over the bugs that are on the bottom floor, which leads to the Teapot Tennis Ball falling over on the rest of Death Pact yet again. After getting the Yoyle light, they finally go back to BFDI 17, but not before Nickel throws out the Yoyle light into Teapot 13. After being pressured by the time limit, Basketball agrees to 1's deal, sends her back to Goiki, and returns Robot Flower to her normal state. At the end, Tennis Ball notices the Yoyle light and recalls it being the same one they had in BFDI 17, and consults Golf Ball about it and keeps it locked in her lab. Not much happens in Teapot 14, other than showing Fiery Jr. being in a log cabin, and is presumably dead, as well as Pencil bringing back the Clubhouse of Awesomeness, which is dissolved back in BFDI 9. Gaiety is also eliminated in the episode, but like with Clock, 2 decides to keep her at the hotel, working with 4 and X. Teapot 15 is rather explosive regarding the timeline, so I'll try and make this short. Some of the failed debuters are shown to be in Tennis Ball/Golf Ball's lab, and see the Yoyle light encased in glass. 1 removes the glass, causing the failed debuters to mess with it, leading all of them to travel to different parts in the past, messing with the timeline. Wait, is that what was happening earlier on? No wonder things seemed off. Gaiety is seen in the kitchen, however sees a misplaced bag on the floor, and it turns out to be a trap and is taken by 1. After the Yoyle light incident, it causes everyone to misremember or forget certain events, aside from Black Hole, who seems to be the only one who still remembers everything. Also, marker is green. After Gaiety is now seated in 1's pocket dimension, 1 tries to get Gaiety to agree to an unknown deal so that the broken timeline can be fixed. Gaiety refuses to sign the deal, as she doesn't believe that 1 is a friend of 2, as 2 never brought her up in any kind of conversation. 1 leaves Gaiety for a bit to mess with the Yoyle light on the ground, bringing back everyone's memories. However, the timeline is still messed up, and now the contestants need to use the broken up Yoyle caused by 10 to bring back the failed debuters. As somehow, shown earlier, they are mostly successful in doing so. However, some teams caused more timeline problems, mainly Cloudier. On the side, Cloudier did go to a different series altogether called BFDI Mini, but I don't think this really affects anything with the main BFDI timeline, so let's just move on. This is where the pencil moment happens, and later sends to BFDI 25, which lets Leafy in Dream Island. In the end, Gady finally agrees to 1's deal, bringing the timeline back to a more stable point, aside from the giant crack in the sky that only Black Hole can deal with. Since 2 was out of commission, however, they now believe that Gady never existed as she isn't in the kitchen, despite having memories of her existing, and this sparks a downward spiral for them. Fanny and Ice Cube spot 1 in a window and now agree that they have to bring awareness to this. Towards the end, we see 8-Ball, a failed exiter, appeared on Dreamier Island with Fiery, where they begin building a boat to likely leave the island. We also see Barfbag, Belle, Bommy, and Needle wandering around in a nightly field, where they encounter a red door, leading to an unfamiliar area. T-Boss 16 is where we first see 2 being in an unresponsive position due to them believing Gady now never existed. As a result, 4 and X host the episode, something they haven't done since BFB 28. At the elimination, Pin and Ice Cube are out, resulting in Pin giving Tree the token she got from Teapot 2, and it's shown that she still has the 2 win tokens all the way back from the first season. Ice Cube as well cannot help Fanny regarding 1 since she is now out. At the start of the challenge, after being tagged by 4, Fanny talks to Tennis Ball, likely wanting to tell him about 1. Pencil gets back her Free Smart Super Van, and the waterfall appears again, not appearing since BFB. This is where Lai and Pen have a talk, with Lai telling Pen that he needs to control his emotions. This episode also holds the first time where a team lost twice, where 2 members on the same team now have a chance to be out. With our current final episode on the timeline, Teapot 17 has 2 apparently being bedridden since New Year's, which at this point means they haven't moved in over 4 months. It is also shown that Tennis Ball cannot read Fanny's notes and research about 1, showing that if they try and tell people anything about 1, they can't understand it. As 4 and X are busy, Bottle takes over as the host. Barfbag, Bommy, Belle, and Needle spot 6 in a tree, and are shocked that there are more of them. One of them brings up 1 to 6, to which 6 is surprised to hear that 1 has apparently been let free. Donut is taken by 1, where 1 wants to sign a deal to get his arms back. In a shocking turn of events, Donut does not sign her contract, being the first person to do so. Annoyed at Donut, 1 rips Donut's legs off, leaving him now with no limbs at all, and kicks him out of her pocket dimension. Is anyone also going to notice how her room is just completely trashed? The last person we saw there before was Gady. Did she do something? We also see Book and Pencil finally confronting each other, with Book stating that she hates Pencil, now putting Pencil in a more hostile and damaging attitude. It's also shown here that Loser pretty much lost all of his fame due to him lying about knowing the toys before they existed in BFB 7. Donut later spots limbs that were taken off from Yellowface as he was eliminated, and works his way to putting them on, finally getting all of his limbs back that he had lost since Teapot 8. Pen has been noticing Pencil's attitude since Teapot 16, and tries to talk to her in the Clubhouse of Awesomeness, although Pencil doesn't make any sounds or remarks towards Pen, and just sits there looking away from him. Pen then leaves her alone after finishing his monologue. At the end, 6, along with the taken contestants, run along the known equation playground to another door that was first shown in Teapot 11, which was opened by Pencil, Bracelety, and David, and is locked from the side they are on. They begin to call for help, to which Purpleface, who is still in the exit, hears them and begins running towards their direction, and the episode ends, along with our current timeline. This was quite a huge timeline to go over. The fact that Teapot 15 and with BFDI coming back messed with so many things, this ended up taking a lot longer than I thought, and I wasn't expecting it to be this packed for the 15 years BFDI has been around. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, feel free to like and subscribe. Thanks again, and I'll be seeing you soon. Bye!